These are the most painful theme park deaths to avoid on your next trip. Number 1. A 17-year-old boy had an absolute blast at the Six Flags Park in Georgia. He was with his family and a group from his church where he had a friend to tag along with him. He hopped on the Batman roller coaster where 32 people can ride at a time. He went through the ride and realized that he had lost his hat. Determined to find his hat, he and his friend looked for it at the bottom of the roller coaster. They both hopped 2 6-foot fences to get to the area where his hat is. Finally, after he found his hat, the boy was ready to return onto other fun rides at the park, until the roller coaster approached him at 50 miles per hour. Asia LeSean Ferguson was decapitated from the Batman ride at Six Flags. The fences they hopped over had signs stating that it was off limits and that it was dangerous. Nobody else was hurt when the boy was struck, and the ride was shut down after the accident, in respect for the family. Number 2. In Rosario, Argentina in 2013, 2 girls aged 12 and 14 were taken to an amusement park on a Saturday. Their uncle was a taxi driver and had gotten tickets from his job to celebrate Children's Day, so they went to the theme park and decided to go on a Ferris wheel called Around the World. The girls and the parents were waiting in line for the next ride to get on the Ferris wheel, and their turn was next, when suddenly one of the gondolas fell from above and crushed the 2 girls. A harness came loose and the gondola swung, then fell from 20 meters. Ambulances and patrol cars from the Rosario Police Department arrived at the scene, which confirmed 2 fatalities and 7 injured. This accident shocked the city once again after a gas leak killed 14 people the week before. 3 months after the incident, the manager of the International Park was charged with negligent homicide. Number 3. In San Luis Potosí, Mexico, a 39-year-old woman was at an amusement park on the 22nd of August 2024. She wanted to go on a Ferris wheel and enjoy the view from the ride, and so she did. One of the people waiting in line decided to take out their phone to record the ride, likely to keep as a memory they were at the fair that day. Then there were screams coming from the line. A woman was hanging onto a gondola. She began to lose her grip and fell from 20 meters, hitting a beam and landing on her head. She was dead on the scene, and her body was transported by forensic experts. It turns out there were 2 different stories of what happened that day. One story indicates that she tried to get off at the end of the ride, but the operator didn't pay attention whether she completely got off and kept the ride going. The second story states that she had been on the ride but the doors weren't closed properly and she ended up falling out the gondola that way. I wasn't able to find any source that led to any sort of negligence charge, only that the governor of the state instructed an investigation and support to the family of the accident. Number 4. A groundskeeper named Samuel Guyton is at work at the Six Flags amusement park in Georgia. He's doing his usual business, keeping the area clean, attractive, and safe for the customers to enjoy at the park. The 58-year-old man was getting his work done when suddenly a 14-year-old girl's leg hit him at 50 miles per hour. Samuel was below a roller coaster ride, and the dangling legs of a girl had hit him in the head. He was transported by paramedics to a hospital, where the blow caused his death from heart failure. Turns out nobody knew why Samuel had gotten into the locked and restricted area that was below the Batman ride at Six Flags, where the signs clearly stated no employees could enter at all times. Number 5. It was 1997 in Oklahoma at Bell's Amusement Park. A 14-year-old boy named Patrick Kurek was at the fairgrounds with his family. It was a day where the park was promoting a ride from the coaster for the cost of only 25 cents, so the place was packed. He decided to go on a roller coaster called the Wildcat, a roller coaster ride that could hold 4 people in a car and would have the basic components of an average roller coaster. Patrick is allowed by his parents to go on the ride and is ready to have a thrill with other passengers. The car began to slowly climb up the hill and was about to reach the peak when a crack was heard and it started to go backwards. Suddenly, the car was hurling down the 13-meter slope into the upcoming car behind them, where they crashed and Patrick and 2 other passengers were ejected on impact. He fell from the ride onto his head, hitting a metal bar. Emergency workers pronounced him dead from blunt head trauma. The 2 other passengers that had fallen out of the cart were taken to the hospital but survived with minor fractures. The anti-rollback device on the car had a part made of plastic that was not approved by the manufacturers. After the tragedy, there was no official settlement disclosed between the park and the family from the accident. The park was dropped of any criminal charges and was closed down 9 years later. While I was researching this accident, I came across a comment claiming to be an employee from the park. He went into detail that the day the accident occurred, the 14-year-old boy and another kid had been aggressively shaking and moving the car before it had rolled back, stating that even if the park ordered the same kind of plastic it should have, it would have broken the plastic anyways. It made sense to me since the park was dropped from charges. However, I can't confirm if this was true since it was a comment on a YouTube video, but I'd figure it was worth mentioning. Number 6. In May 1972, at the BatterSea Fun Fair in London, there was a wooden roller coaster named the Big Dipper. It was more than 20 years old and was a popular ride in London's fun fair. a 14-year-old girl named Carolyn Adamczyk went aboard with her friends. They hopped on the ride and were about to reach the peak of a slope when all of a sudden the hauling cable snapped. Now, the way this roller coaster worked is there would be a man in between the cars to control the speed of the ride, so even the man who was on the ride to control the brakes could not stop the ride from going backwards after the cable broke. The reason for this was because the brake mechanisms underneath the cars were defective and missing. The passengers initially thought he was part of the ride, but then they saw his face worried and panicking. They began to panic too. The train began hurling back, then turned around a tight curve where one of the three cars derailed, causing the train to fall 15 feet and to pile up onto each other. The other two cars rammed into the stationary train at the lobby area. 31 passengers were in the cars and 13 were injured from the crash. Medical personnel arrived and found 3 children dead at the scene. 2 other children were heavily injured and were brought to the hospital. However, they died after succumbing to injuries. This event is considered the worst roller coaster tragedy to have ever occurred in the world. Number 7. A 52-year-old grandmother was with her sister and 4-year-old grandson at Six Flags in New Orleans 2003, July 9th. She let her grandchild get on the Joker's JukeBox ride, a ride where 6 arms had 5 cars for kids to enter and spin around. She saw that her grandson's seatbelt wasn't on properly, so she went and tightened the belt for him. However, the ride began to initiate and spun towards the grandmother, bashing her head. She was thrown back and then hit again, but this time straight in her abdomen. She was rushed to Lakeland Medical Hospital, but was bleeding heavily and died on the way there. She had sustained a crushed pelvis and broken ribs where a bone fragment from her rib severed a major artery. It wasn't clear how she got so close to the ride before it was about to start, as there were gates to prevent customers from getting in the area. After the accident, the ride was closed for 5 days until it was reopened with additional safety measures such as mirrors for operators to view the area better and a pre-recorded message with safety precautions to announce before the ride. I wasn't able to find if the family was compensated for this accident. However, 20 years later, it was abandoned because Hurricane Katrina flooded the area, and the ride in 2025 looks like this. Number 8. In 1997, a senior class from Napa High School was at Waterworld USA Park in California. They talked about how they wanted to break a senior class record for how many people they could fit in a water slide at one time. This was because the school had a tradition every year where the seniors would have a final trip to enjoy with their classmates to a water park. The previous record set the year before was 60 people on a slide at once. They stayed at the water park as usual, having fun going down the slides with their friends until an announcement was made calling students from the high school to return to their buses. This is when they all gathered to the top of the Banzai pipeline slide, which stood at 40 meters above the ground. Multiple students maneuvered past the lifeguard and began stacking themselves on the slide. The lifeguard blew his whistle and demanded the students to stop, but they kept on flooding the slide. He called security to get students under control until a loud noise was heard from the slide. The fiberglass holding the slide tore apart and opened the students into a free fall over 15 meters. 32 students fell into the park below, landing on flower beds, bushes, concrete, and beams holding the slide together. The group of seniors were seriously injured. Customers and employees went to each student and performed first aid. Ambulances arrived and each teen was transported to 9 different hospitals due to the high volume of victims. 17-year-old Quimby Gilotti was the only senior that died from the fall. She sustained major head trauma and her chest was crushed, dying 45 minutes after the accident. The water park was not at fault for the incident because the water slide was not being used as intended. However, they still ended up paying over $4 million in settlements to the families to stop legal disputes. Now, why didn't the accident occur sooner if it was a school tradition to fit so many people in a slide? It's because the school usually chose a different water park that had slides mounted on a hill, making it structurally unable to collapse as it did at Waterworld. Number 9. In Edmonton, Canada, 1986, the largest indoor 3-loop roller coaster is located within a shopping mall at Fantasyland Park. The roller coaster was called the Mindbender, a ride where its top speed was 60 miles per hour with 4 cars that could hold 4 people. On June 14th, the ride was closed temporarily for 30 minutes to fix one of the cars by an engineer. After it was opened, passengers went on board to enjoy the ride. They were having a thrill for the first half of the ride as any other roller coaster should. Almost about to finish the minute-and-a-half journey, they began to hear noise coming from the last car. The last car had derailed off of the coaster's track and lost its wheels. The lap bars, the only thing securing the passengers safely on the ride, suddenly malfunctioned and raised up from the passengers' legs. This sent the passengers flying from the momentum on the ride. 3 of them were killed from the impact on the cement floor, 1 colliding with a concrete pillar. The only surviving passenger in the car, named Rodney Shako, shattered his legs, every rib on his left side, crushed half of his left shoulder, broke his lower back and pelvis. He was lucky to have survived, but he had been permanently affected by the accident, retiring early and taking painkillers and medical marijuana consistently decades later. He received an undisclosed settlement from the mall and still remembers his friend who died on the ride. The ride was closed for more than a year after, where it reopened in 1987 with several modifications to the cars such as seatbelts, an anti-rollback mechanism, and a train reduction of 3 cars. The roller coaster was decommissioned in 2022 and no longer exists at the mall. Number 10. It was a beautiful day in Shenzhen, China on June 29, 2010. Families went aboard on an indoor ride called the Space Journey Ride. There were 12 cars that could hold 4 people at a time. The cars would spin from the base mechanism like a helicopter, except the cars would move up and down from a pole to simulate a spaceship taking off. All was going well in the usual routine for EcoVenture Valley Amusement Park, when one of the cars broke off. It fell from around 12 meters and landed near the exit of the ride, which will be unfortunate later. The car had landed on an unconfirmed object to make it catch on fire. The ride eventually stopped and the passengers were now in a situation where smoke was filling up the building. The scene was chaotic. The passengers needed to get out, but with the door blocked by the fallen car, they could barely make it through one at a time. Emergency services had to break in, where they saved as many passengers as they could, but many dozens of passengers were passing out from the smoke. They transported unconscious passengers from the area, and at the end of the accident 6 people had died, 4 from the ride breaking off and 2 inhaling smoke. The accident was caused by the car breaking off the ride's arm. Engineers overestimated the amount of weight the arms could hold on the ride. Each car weighed around 5 tons, and the car that fell from the ride had passengers weighing heavier than the ride would usually hold. The manufacturers that made the ride were a knockoff company, where they would make existing rides and duplicate them with a cheaper price. This ride was actually a unique ride produced by the knockoff company, so it's likely another reason why the accident occurred. No lawsuit was disclosed to the company that built the ride, and they continued to make rides in 2025. The amusement park compensated the affected families to avoid any lawsuits. Keep in mind, theme park accidents are very rare and shouldn't keep you from enjoying them. As long as rules are being followed and a well-maintained park is in place, you're more likely to get struck by lightning than to die by an accident. The shirt that I'm wearing is also on my online shop, justjams.store. Have a great rest of your day.